Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be your host today on Archery Talk 101. We have a special guest on the show today. We have Cody Hart on the phone, and we're going to talk to him about how he got started in archery and what he's doing. Welcome to the show, Cody.
Hey, glad to be here. I hope everyone's doing all right this afternoon.
So when did you get started and why did you get started in archery?
I'm going to say I was probably around 14. And honestly, of course, my dad never really did deer hunt much. And there was a place, I was originally from Arkansas, and there was a place down the road that was a wildlife refuge that didn't allow deer hunting for like, I believe it was 1950s. And they opened archery season and you had to get drawn. And Dad said, well, if we ever get a chance to hunt there, we're going to go. So needless to say, I picked up a bow off a boy I knew. He was a little older than I was. He had a PSE mock flight 4. I didn't know nothing about draw length, the weight, nothing. I just, I picked up the bow and arrow and I practiced with it. And, I just started hunting after I got comfortable with it. And that's pretty much where it all started right there. And I just fell in love with it over the years and just progressed and learned more about it. And, it gets in your blood. We'll say that.
That it does. We all start off with being fairly young. Some of us, and some start when we're a lot older. I know I started when I was probably about your age, but that was in the 60s.
Yes, sir.
So, I was like 10, 12 years old when I got started in archery, and there it was just pretty much, you had your options. You could pick between recurve or longbow, and you could pick either wood or fiberglass bows, and your arrows options are wood or wood.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Boy, how times have changed.
Oh yeah, it was in the 70s when they started getting compounds, and I started with that, and I still shoot compound and recurve both, but that's always fun.
Yeah, my compound is mainly what I use. I've got a longbow up here on the shelf that I've shot several times, and I say I got decent with it, but I just haven't went to the woods with it yet. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, I mostly use mine, just kind of for fun shooting and not really too much. I got it set up for bow fishing. Because the way I shoot a recurve is incomplete instinctive. I just look where I want the arrow to go, and then I just shoot. And when you're bow fishing, you don't have time to find your sights, your anchor point, find your keep, and by the time you do all that, the fish ain't anywhere near.
Yeah, it's done gone.
It's done gone. You got a matter of a few seconds to draw, hit your anchor point, and just keep going. You don't have time to do anything else, and that's where I shoot them. And I just never picked up the ability to, or even wanted to shoot a compound instinctively. It's a different weapon. I shoot them differently, and I can't shoot fast.
That's one thing over the years I've told all my friends that never bow hunted much, and I've got several of them into it. And that's one thing I've always told them. I said, I can pick up a gun and go hunting, but when I shoot my compound, it's like something goes off up here. I feel just as confident, if not more confident, with my compound than I do with my rifle. And, when you pull back the string and you put the sight on them and you're holding steady, when you let go, it's like something went off in your head instead of you just squeezing a trigger,
Right.
And then the reward is a lot better. There's no doubt about it. It's all a head game. And that's what I've done. And the way things have changed over the years to make it so much easier too. There's people, they say, I can't shoot no compound. I'm like, yeah, you can. Come on. I was like, it may take you a few tries, but the main thing is if you're going to shoot a compound is, go somewhere that can set you up for your draw length and weight and get you set up right. And that's the key to it, because I've seen so many people and, their bows not be set up for them. They just grab a bow and go. And, I'm not saying you can't be successful like that, because I was when I was younger, but, it's a lot easier when you get it fitted for you.
Right. I know my first compound that I bought, I used my brother had the old whitetail bears bows.
Oh yeah.
And it was interesting. It didn't have a whole lot of let off on it. It was like 65%. But
Yeah,
it wasn't that great of a bow, but hey, it was a compound. It was more than
That's
the other
right.
one. And I remember the first compound that I went out and bought new from that one. I went to the archery store and she showed me one. I drew it back and then like way back, like 32-inch draw length. And she said, "How does that feel?" I was like, I didn't know much better. I said, okay. So I thought I was 32-inch draw length. So when I had to get another bow, I ordered a 32-inch draw length bow. Come to find out,
Lord.
Yeah. In the mid-90s, I went and took some lessons on how to shoot back tension release and how to set them up, and then subsequently I become a NFA archery instructor. And this measure that says you to be 29 and a half. This is on a Friday. It's a 3-day course. So Friday night, he says, you got to be 29 and a half for tomorrow night's class. Your bow has to be set at 29 and a half, or you can't continue. There's no reason to continue. So I'm going to get a new string, get it all set up, get it down to 29 and a half. And then it's like, I don't like this. It don't feel right. And then not only that, but I'm learning how to shoot back tension. You shoot with eyes closed and open them up, and they don't work and don't feel good. Now I shoot 29.
Yep.
So I could shoot 29, and in wintertime with big heavy parkas, because I'm up here in Nebraska, wintertime, right now it's a little bit warmer today, but most of this week it's in the 20s, and you're going to wear a heavy coat.
Right. You're
29. I can wear that heavy coat, don't need to put an arm guard on.
And I don't, sense.
A lot of people have that arm pointing way over in front of them, so you have to use with your triceps to pull the bow back as there's pressure on it. I don't. I push straight forward to it, and I have enough bend in there that it's just short enough that it works just fine. And from going from 32 to 29, that's a 3-inch shorter draw length.
Man, that's the difference. That's something to get used to too, boy. I tell you that.
Right.
But you're right, like you're saying, that's another thing when you're layering up, and a lot of times you don't practice, when you go out in the yard, or you're practicing with a light jacket or a t-shirt, depending on summer or winter. And then when you get up in the stand and it's 20 something or 15 degrees and you got several layers on, hey, it makes a difference on getting that bow back and getting it right where it needs to be, So it can be frustrating, if you've got a lot of layers on and you haven't really practiced a little bit and you're not expecting it, and you draw that arm over, and like you said, it's easy to hit that arm.
Oh yeah. Well, no, that I had one time, I was doing a lot of shooting come hunting season. I pretty much didn't practice anymore. And it was like one of those cases. I've got the heavy coat on. I get to the tree stand, put my coveralls on, climb up in the tree stand and sit there. And I was like, okay, I always like to draw my bow back once I'm up and settle down and relax everything. Try and draw my bow back, before something comes in. So if I know there's something wrong, I know it ahead of time. I try to draw this bow. I could not pull it back. The thing I could do, I pulled and I pulled and I pulled, and I ended up pulling something. I was sore for like a week or so after that. Once it warmed up, I could eventually pull it back. But when the keys, I shoot 70 pounds, and I'm shooting 70 pounds. And then come wintertime, when hunting season stopped, I stopped basically doing a lot of practicing. And now then you get up there, you're cold, a little stiff, muscles aren't warmed up, and I couldn't pull it back.
I often wonder, see, I live in West Tennessee, and of course we don't get none of the temperatures usually like you folks up north get. It's, we had the coldest weather this year I think we've had since 89. I think it actually got right at -1 degrees, and I'm telling you, it was something else for us. And I often wonder how the folks up north, how they shoot their bows. It's a whole different ball game. Because like you said, when it's cold and those muscles are stiff and, you're not used to it, boy, it makes a difference drawing that bow back.
Yeah, it does. And all of that, being cold, everything else is stiffer.
Yeah.
Your limbs could be a little stiffer. Your axles, even if there's any oil or any grease in those axles, if they're not lubricated correctly, that oil can get stiff, and then it's a little harder to go. So now it's harder to pull. It's going to slow your bow down. The things can change, in the wintertime.
That's right. I remember one time, it was years ago, I had to work one day and I didn't have to go in until later on in the morning. So I decided I was going to get up in the stand close to where I was working that day. And I had a couple does come out, and I was wanting to take one for the meat. And it was really cold that morning for here. I want to say it was around 5 or 6 degrees, which is, cold for West Tennessee. And they come by me and got in range. Boy, I went to draw that bow back, and it's just like I hit a brick wall. And I actually remember pulling off to the side. It's like I couldn't function. I didn't even get on her. I actually pulled to the side and just let the bow down and said, nope, I ain't even going to do it. Let her go on by.
Yeah, sometimes you got to do that. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is you still need practice, even though it's hunting season, because you don't get a lot of chance to get warmed up. And I know one of the podcasts we had a couple times ago, we had a yoga instructor on, and she was talking about things you can do to kind of warm up when you get to the stand, different yoga things that you can do that help loosen the muscles up and the joints up and stuff like that. So, anybody interested in that, go back and check out that podcast. That was interesting, some of the stuff that she brought up. Not being an archer, but being a yoga instructor, and she had shot archery, so she kind of knew what's going on. So she's able to take her, what we're doing to help, such archers out in doing some of that stuff. And
yeah, that'd be interesting to listen to her.
Yeah, I have all kinds of different people. I've had physical therapy doctors on. One of my earlier podcasts was, about a year ago, was with a physical therapy doctor and talking about shoulder injuries. Because one of the things that archers will do, especially the older ones, they didn't know that stretch the arm all the way out as far as they can. And then that raises the shoulder up. Now the tendons are holding the shoulder and the joints do it. And, that's one of the things that, a lot of people have trouble with their shoulders is because their shoulder is up. And you can see it when you look at somebody. You take a look, is that shoulder up or is the shoulder drop down? And, that's one of the things you have to look at too, being an archery instructor. I've been teaching archery since 1995. So I've taught hundreds of people how to shoot, taking beginners. I like working with beginners, get them started out, on a better form. And I've done that. I taught a guy had never shot a bow before, and 2 weeks later, he's got a Robin Hood already.
Oh man!
So, yeah, and
hooked for life.
yeah. When you can do that, you're hooked. You're hooked. And the podcast we just did, the one before this, we talked about good quality releases and your form. You're better off to get go to the pawn shop and get a used bow that spend as much, if not more, on a good release. And I got a call from a friend of mine that, we used to hang around. He's out in Oregon. I'm in Nebraska, but, I got him a release. He's actually shooting the exact same handheld release I'm shooting. And he hadn't shot for 10 years or so. And he picked up his bow and he shot, like 3 shots, just 3 or 6 shots, forget what he said. Just not even aiming, just hit the target. And then he got serious and he stuck 2 arrows side by side, and the third arrow stuck in the back of another arrow, and he hadn't shot for 10 years. Quality release, as well as good form. They don't take but a few shots, get back in. You've got that technique, and 3 shots and had a Robin Hood already.
You can't go wrong with that. But like you said, the form and the quality of release and your equipment, it's a good thing to know what you need, and to have somebody to teach you that knows what they're doing and can kind of guide you along. it's nice. I mean, it's like I've taught, several friends and younger folks, introduced them to the archery world, and I enjoy it myself. I'm no pro by no means when it comes, to setting them up or anything like that. But main thing I tell them is practice, because if you don't practice, if you shoot, you know, you sling 4 or 5 arrows here and there, maybe once a week, and you go back out next week, and you can't find that anchor point, you just can't, practice a lot at first helps everyone. And even if
Right.
you're, experienced. So, I mean, I'm guilty of it. Now, when season opens, I'm just as guilty as the next man. I don't practice as much during season as I should. We all practice before season, but we kind of slack off during season. In all honesty, that's when we need to practice the most, really.
Right. Off season, you got multiple shots. During deer season, you only have one shot.
That's it.
You only got one. Your first one has to count. That's why when you go to tournaments, so you want to warm up? Nope. I don't get to warm up when I hunt.
That's right.
I'm not going to warm. First one counts. First one's the money shot.
That's right. It all boils down to that one shot and that 1 second or minute, whatever you've got when they're standing in front of you, So you got to be ready.
So do you compete in 3D tournaments as well then now?
I do not. I have often thought about it. I've got a local shop not too far from me. They do several of them, and I've been wanting to get into it. I just haven't found the time to get in it yet. But one of these days, I do plan on doing it.
Yeah, the thing I like about the 3Ds is it gives you that hunting simulation. It's not actual hunting because the animals won't move. And you have time to make your shot, and sometimes they have some weird angles, but and aiming on a 3D target is not the same as aiming on a live up target. You take that deer that's downhill, you're going to put that shot where the 10 or 12 ring or whatever type target you're shooting. But if you shoot an animal the same way, you have a bottom exit. So you have to kind of look at that, where, the aim point. I actually had a podcast talking about, the difference between shooting 3D targets as well as shooting animals. 3D targets, you shoot for the entry point. On animals, you shoot for the exit point.
Yeah, you're correct. There's a lot of difference. I mean, the entrance basically be the same, but you don't know where that arrow is going to come out on the target versus the animal. So right. You're exactly right.
Yeah. And then, judging yardage is another thing that's good about 3D shoots, because they're, unless you're shooting a marked yardage one, which I don't really like those. The whole thing is, I'm using that to get, a little bit better at judging yardage and executing shots. So that's what I want to use them for, or that's what I use them for. If it's a marked yardage one, it's just like a target shoot at that point, because the yardage. Right. And I shoot spots to develop my skill to know that I'm going to hit the target. I don't really shoot a lot of, target tournaments. Do you shoot many of those, or do you shoot any at all?
Target tournaments?
Yeah.
I honestly, the tournament world, I haven't really entered it over the years. Like I said, I stay so busy. I usually don't have the time to do it, but I'm honestly thinking about starting up this year, because like I said, there's a guy that moved in and he started doing them 3D shoots and target shoots. He owns the bow shop, but he lives closer to me, and he's doing them. He's holding them at his house. And I've honestly think I'm going to get into that. I think I'd enjoy it.
I think the 3Ds are a lot more fun than targets.
I can
personally,
see that.
I do.
I could see that. And another thing, you're talking about yardage, when you just the non-marked tournaments and stuff, man, it's a different world. A lot of us these days rely on the range finders. And I remember when I first started, for years, of course, I didn't have the money to buy a rangefinder back then. And a lot of times before I'd get my stand, I'd just kind of step off the yardage I'd step me off 20 yards and I'd know what was my limits out past that. And before I got to the 20 yards and rangefinders are nice. I mean, I love them, but they're not always going to be able to, to range the animal within that split second. So
Right.
it's good to know yardage, to get out in the yard and just, sling a few arrows and kind of know your yardage. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I know. I started, like I said, archery back in the 60s, and I started hunting, back in the 90s. That I was 67 before I got my first rangefinder.
Oh man.
So I used it this last season out during rifle season because I wanted to be, so close, because where I was hunting at was rifle season, and also do archery and rifle depending on what time of year it is.
Right. I've got a little girl here that decided she wanted to come join for a minute.
Yeah.
That's my daughter.
Does she shoot as well?
She hasn't shot none yet. She just turned 5. She has an older sister that's just turned 13, and she shoots some. Yes, she's got a Hoyt Vixen that was actually her mother's. Her mother used to shoot, and I've got her started shooting this past year, and she loves it. Of course, she's at that age, she don't just go out and shoot every day, but it's good, father and daughter time for us. She hasn't hunted with it yet, but
now I know my kids all started out when I was about 5 years old on a 5-pound compound.
Yeah,
just a little cheap one, and they all got started. And by the time my youngest son was in Cub Scout, was 8 years old, he knew enough about archery. He'd go out there and shoot all day long, and he went to an archery club, the Cub Scout camp, and he's up there and on the line and raises his hand, and the instructor for the course range instructor, he comes over and says, "Yeah, Jerry, what's wrong?" And he says, "Knock points off on this bow." This is an 8-year-old telling an adult to knock points off on his bow. Yeah, so they can start. You just kind of have to, get a bow they can shoot, and I'd take them to 3D shoots, and I'd put them close enough that they could hit the animal, and if they hit it, they got 5 points.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the way to do it. My oldest daughter, I believe it's a diamond nuclear ice that she started shooting some when she was smaller, and I've got to get another string put on it, and I was actually thinking this spring maybe starting her out with it, because it's a real small bow and really adjustable on the weight and draw length, so I think it'd be perfect for her to start with.
Yeah, get her started. She might like it, she might not, you never know. I know kids at that age, they have to have something to kind of keep them busy, and archery is something to keep them busy. Just give them a whole bunch of arrows, and you can use some of your old arrows that you cut them down for them. And I used to do that, as I'd have an arrow that would break or something, I cut way past the break, and is long enough for the
long enough for
8-year-olds.
Theirs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I believe I done that with that nuclear ice. That's usually what I done, was take the arrows, my older arrows, or the ones like you said would break off, and just cut them and put a new insert and everything in them, and they're ready to go. They don't, they don't have to have nothing special at that age, just something to get them started.
Yeah, and a lot of the arrows that are designed for kids like that, the tips won't stick in your foam targets anyway. They just barely stick in the layered foam ones.
Yeah, you're right. Some of the bigger targets, like the yellow jackets and stuff, they won't even penetrate. A lot of times they'll just bounce.
Yeah, those aren't designed for those really light, especially get the safety tip ones on them. And
right.
Yeah, she's photobombing you.
Yes, she is, very much so. I'm thinking to her, she don't go on somewhere, girl. Sit down now. If you want to join us, you're gonna have to sit down. Lord, she's a mess.
Yeah, for the listeners that don't get to see the video, his daughter come in and is having a lot of fun in the background here, actually in the foreground.
Oh yeah,
so it's nice to get kids involved in archery. Gives them something to do.
Yes, he's trying to be the center of attention for sure.
Yeah. So whatever you doing now? I was looking at your Facebook group, and your field staff and pro staff are a couple different things. Let's know something about that. It says you're a field staff for Nose Down Sense.
Yes, sir. Nose Down Sense is based out of Georgetown, Tennessee. It's a good company to work with, and all natural scents and scents that do work. Of course, like the doe estrus is my favorite. Of course, usually that's most of your hunters' favorite, because when they hunt, most of them love hunting the ruts, and that's
right.
It's a big hit, and it does real well. I've had good success with it. I actually killed. Well, let's just show you. I killed. Now this big one here, I'm going to show you. I did not kill it with a bow. Unfortunately, I've got a small property across the road from my house, and it's mainly just a big pasture. And I had this buck coming in on camera. I hunted him up in bow season, and I realized he started making his rounds in the pasture, and there was no trees bordering it. I did put up a blind, but he got to where he was coming out at one certain point. And a lot of times here during our cool months, the wind's out of the north or northwest, and I just couldn't get set up on him with a bow. I tried everything, but I knew hunting this deer, I wanted to kill him with a bow bad. I hunted him all bow season and into gun season some. Because, of course, we have a short bow season. Of course, you can hunt with a bow during rifle too. But this deer here, I actually killed is, I don't know if you could tell much about him.
Yeah, for the ones that get to watch this in video, they'll be able to see it. But for those on the podcast, they can't really see it. So I'll let you describe what it looks like. He's got a big, thick rack.
Yeah, he's a mainframe 8 with a split G2. Of course, he grows 153, which for West Tennessee, that's a stud. But I've got this one right here is my biggest archery buck, and I'll show you, and I'll tell the people out there listening. Here in West Tennessee, we have what they call a velvet hunt. They introduced that to the state about, 4 years ago, and it's usually a 3-day hunt. And it started out as bow only. And this buck right here, I've killed. This is my 4th velvet buck. And this buck here, I was actually sitting on the ground, and he come out into the beans. Now, I practice my shots. I practice in the yard. I shoot, 80 yards. Do I take shots at deer at 80 yards? Normally, no, I do not. I'm not judging nobody that do, hey, if you're comfortable, depending on the situation. This deer here come out, and it was the last afternoon he come out in the beans, and I was actually sitting on the ground. I had I'm not going to say it was a pop-up blind. Those, just the blinds, kind of like a turkey blind, but it was about 4 foot tall that just goes around in front of you. I was sitting down behind it, and I had a bachelor group of bucks come in, and this 8-point come out, and the closest he would get was 47 yards. And of course, I felt comfortable. I'd been taking those shots every day up until that hunt. I mean, I had been hitting the bow hard, practicing, making sure that when I did take the shot, it would count. And it did, 47 yards on the ground. And that was my longest bow shot. And like I said, it was my biggest deer. He was a full velvet 8-point, and he grossed 138. I haven't had him scored officially, since the drying period, because the velvet's a little different, on getting them scored. And it's awesome. It's a good opportunity to get out there too. But like I said, that's my biggest archery buck. And for here in Tennessee, it's a respectable deer. And there's nothing like it though. I wouldn't have took nothing back. I wouldn't want to shoot it with a gun. I love, every minute of it. Like I said, it was rewarding. It was. And the deer didn't go. He went about 70 yards, I believe. he ended up, funny thing was, I looked for the deer for, I'm going to say, an hour and a half, because it was raining when I shot him and there was no blood in the field. So I got lucky and I walked this creek. I'd done walked around it twice. And I got over there close and I shined the light back down where some thick stuff was that I couldn't get to the bank. And I seen a white spot laying up in the water. And it just, one little small spot, and there he was. I mean, he didn't go 70 yards. And it, all the practice and the time put in, making sure I had the right equipment, and everything I needed to get the job done, and it paid off.
Being prepared, taking practice those longer shots, and that's what a lot of people don't do, is they don't practice those longer shots. And when you look at what's your effective range, how close can you range it? If you're off by 5 yards, where are you at? So if you're off by 5 yards, where are you going to hit? And then you take, how accurate can you be? What kind of groups can you get at your 50-yard range, your 40 and 50 and 60-yard ranges? What kind of groups you have? And then you adjust by 5 yards, now you can be in a bad shot. So that's what's important, to shoot those longer ones. I would shoot, I go to practice, because the indoor range club I belong to, we could 20-yard normal, you go back to 30, and then if you go back past the elevator, you could shoot, to 40. But you had to watch, because when they come down, the steps coming in, they kind of walk past where you're shooting, so you'd have to make sure that nobody's actually coming in. And I'd go back and I'd shoot 20 and then go 30 and then 40. And by the time I go back up to 20, I'm just smacking arrows. So I wouldn't shoot single spots because I get tired of bending aluminum arrows.
Exactly. And I still sometimes today, I try not to shoot the same spot with my carbon arrows, because, it's the same way. It's easy to knock a knock off. I'm not going to say it's easy to Robin Hood, because Lord knows that's, it takes skill and time. I've done it, but it's not one of those things you walk out in the yard and do every day.
No,
that's for sure.
I've done it quite a few times. I have, when I was working at Cabela's, I did it twice there.
Yeah.
One with a customer's bow, I set up a drop away rest. And when you set up a drop away rest, you have to shoot them to see if they're going to work.
Right.
And you have to put an arrow in them to shoot them. So I grabbed one of our range arrows, and there was guys sitting there watching. I drew back and shot it. And I drew back, shot it again, stuck 2 arrows together. And this guy says, "Honest, somebody do that?" Yeah, well, I'm sure glad it's their arrows and not mine. Yeah, and there you go. It's in fact, it was either that one or the other time I did there. I did another one. We'd had a bow in custom for us. It was one that was made special for Cabela's. I think Bow Tech made it or something. And we had like 3 of them in. So we set one up. So we set it up for me, my draw length. I shot a couple arrows, stuck 2 arrows together. And we set up for another guy. He's shooting at 1-inch circles. He had put 6 of them up there. He hit 5 out of the 6. Another guy was shooting good, and they come in and says, "Well, we got to pull them off the shelves because there's a problem. They're recalling them because nobody can get them set up." Look at him and says, "Are they just stupid? I don't know what they're doing or what." We just set this bow up for 3 different people and shooting. It's like, here's what I did. I showed him the arrow. I was like, "Here's what I did with it. I shot it a couple of times, stuck to the other. What's wrong with setting a bow up?"
Yeah.
So then they come back later. There was something, I don't know what it was, but then they come back later. They was back in, but it's like, but I was working with another guy that I'd worked with when I was at Vassar. So I started my own sports goods store, and then I become an archery dealer, went down, spent a week down in Tucson, Arizona at POC school, learning how to tear apart their bows, put them together, make strings, make the old steel cables that used to be on the older bows.
Oh yeah.
That's an art in itself. That's a whole lesson in, you don't want to do it.
Yeah, I remember those. I believe that that first bow that I taught you about, the Mach Flight 4, I'm pretty sure it had the cable on it.
Yeah, those were, when I was doing it all the time, somebody come in with a broken cable. You have to make 2 of them because they're steel cables, and they have to be, exact as you can. You can't be off by 1/4 of an inch, because now then your timing is all off. They got to be 16th of an inch or less as far as exact length. And if they're not, you got to tear one apart. And if one breaks, you still have to make two, because you can't use the one that broke as the length. So you use the good one, you take it off, and then use that to measure to make your two new ones, put your two new ones on. Then it was like $20 for a set of cables.
Yeah.
And then here, probably 7-8 years ago, last time I heard, they're like $100 a piece for a steel cable.
Woo. I haven't.
And now then you're looking at somebody like, I know how to make them, but I'm going to charge you $300 for the material. Plus, I'm going to charge you probably a couple $100 for labor because of the risk I'm putting in there to try and make them. And it's just not worth it. Even if I charged you $200, I have to buy an extra cable. Yeah, now I'm not enough if I, mess up two of them somehow, so you got to take that into account, and it's just not worth it.
No, I agree. But like I said, technology and stuff has come so far over the years. It's unbelievable. It really is. The speeds of the bows these days are, just zipping compared to what they was. I remember, of course, I'm not as old as you are or many of the other archers. I'm only 32. So, but I remember I started with that PSC, and Lord knows back then we wasn't worried about, when I got it, I wasn't worried about speed. I was just worried about, and of course, I remember I bought a Bowtech Tomcat. That was one of my nicer bows at the time. And I believe it was only shooting 270s, 280s. But hey, I killed several good deer, including a big mature 8-point that I've got on my wall here behind me. And but something I do recommend though to a lot of the listeners, you go to these sporting good places, I say like Academy and places like that sell bows, and a lot of times the people they put in there to set them up are not really experienced. And right. I've seen some people, they get aggravated because they go somewhere and they get they buy a bow there, and that's not set up correct or something. So my advice, to anybody that's wanting to get into bow hunting or something is, do your research and find, a shop that's what they specialize in, is archery. I'm not saying there's not shops out there. I know Cabela's and Bass Pro usually have a pretty good bow tech in there, bow technician. But like I said, there's other stores that don't. So if you've got a local shop that people can recommend, go there and get fitted for you, and know that you're dealing with somebody that's going to set you up correct way, because you can lose. If you get a bow that's not set up right, you pay a bunch of money for, and it's just not set up right for you, and you go out there and you can't get consistent with it, it can wear you down. And then you can, for a new shooter, you'd be like, well, I can't hit nothing. I don't even want to go shoot, it's not fun no more, so.
Right.
My thing to me is, find a local shop or a shop that knows what they're doing to help you out, and point you in the right direction.
Yeah. I know, Cabela's and Bass Pro, when I worked at Bass Pro, we had some people there that had a lot of experience. And when I went to Cabela's, we had some people there. Once I got there, we had people with experience. But I know there's times when you go in there, after I left, and the other guy that, I worked with for many years, he left. There's pretty much, I went in there one time and like, well, talking about his experience, like, he actually wanted to work somewhere else, and they said, well, I got this opening archery, and he said, well, I shot a bow as a kid, so now he's selling archery equipment. You just don't know. Flipping a coin.
That's right.
I was fortunate that when I was working at Bass Pro, there was 3 of us in there, and between the 3 of us, we probably had close to 80 plus years of experience setting up bows.
And that goes a long way.
Yeah. And then, I went over to Cabela's, and then one of the guys that was at Bass Pro, he quit and come over to Cabela's as well. And so between, that was 2 of the 3 of us, so 4 of us that had so much experience. And, we had a lot of experience. And, one thing that archers will do is they'll find a bow tech that they like working with, and they'll wait in line you know.
Yeah.
John was telling one time he had a line back about 4-hour delay. And he wasn't the only bow tech working, but they all wanted him to work on his bows. And I says, "Oh, wait." And then as a bow tech that, he wasn't waiting for him, I had others that only wanted me to work on their bows.
Right.
So, you don't get upset. It's like archers don't like everybody just touching their bows, especially if we get, a little bit later. And I had one of my shooters when I had my store, either him and I is the only ones that work on his bows. He wouldn't let nobody else touch it, because he knew I knew what I was doing.
Right.
And that's the thing you need to look for. And in the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group, which I manage that one, in there we have a lot of bow techs in there and archery instructors, anywhere from people that have been shooting for 7 weeks to 7 months to 70 years. And we got bow techs in there with 20 plus years experience, and archery instructors with, like myself, I've been teaching since 95. So I've got over 25 years experience teaching. And, that's nice what that group is. You can get in there and that new archer that looking for something, it's like, okay, what do I need to look for? Here's what they're telling me. Is that right? That we can filter through all that. And I just make it a safe place for them. So the only links you'll see is to archery events, because I don't let you sell in the group, because I don't want to be selling. I want to hear it because it's Archery Talk 101. I want it to be for beginners to learn from bit more experienced archers. And that's what we're doing in there.
Right. And that's perfect. I mean, that's what they need. Because like I said, if you get a bow or somebody that tries to teach you, you need to know somebody, get with somebody that's going to teach you right, that's been around the archery, because it can really make you not want to shoot a bow as a beginner, if you get something that's not set up right or, something like that. So it goes a long way to have somebody, a bow tech or somebody that knows what they're doing to help you out for sure.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that you can learn. And sometimes, as a bow tech or as an instructor, I'm going to learn a lot by trying to teach somebody else something. I remember one night I got this call from this guy. He says, "Can you set my bow up to shoot 2 arrows same time?" And I says, "Well, why?" Because he talked to all the other archery shops and they said, "Nope, can't do it. Nope. Al said no." I said, "Well, you can't afford me during regular hours, but if you want to stop by after we close, let's play." So he come by, and what he wanted to do is, he was a motivational speaker. He wanted to set up 2 balloons and shoot 2 arrows and pop 2 balloons to get the kids' attention.
Right.
Like, okay, you shoot a bow, 2 arrows, pop 2 balloons at the same time. Okay, now he's got their attention. Now he can talk to them. And it was just using it as something to get their attention. And fortunately, it wasn't the center shot design risers like we have nowadays, where you put the one rest on, there's only place to mount one rest. It was the older style, which wasn't center shot design. And you could use the stick-on rests. So I was able to put 2 stick-on rest on, and then want to shoot with a release. So we had to figure out how to tie the loop on to shoot with the release. And we tried, different different arrangements there, as well as different fletching arrangements, so they lined up. And we tying the loop in the middle of the 2 of them. We couldn't get consistent grouping. We tied it below the one, couldn't do it. And just finally what we had to do was you had to have 2 knock points on there because you had something to hold the arrows in place.
Right.
But you have to have one at least for the one. So we tied the knot above the top one and below the bottom one, so they were evenly spaced. So we had, it was up against the top knock, and then there was the arrow knock, and then the arrow on the bottom. We tied the loop below it, and that where we was able to get our most consistent grouping. And we were able to get our groups. The distance between the 2 groups was about 1/8 of an inch consistently on every shot.
Like, that's pretty good.
Now, where they hit was all depending on him shooting.
Right.
But the distance between the arrows was the same every one. And we spent probably an hour and a half but that told us so much about how to set up a loop correctly. And, I've seen people put loops below, or he says, oh, okay, you got to tie knots in before you put your loops on. And, maybe with some of the really, really short axle bows, because that string is so short, you might have to, because it helps keep it from pinching. But, we found the most efficient way is to have it above and below. So when you release, the force goes right through the knock. And then that's where you're setting your rest up. So your rest needs to be level and plumb, your center shot, so you're direct in like your string. And they give us the most efficient arrow flight. I like to equate it to take a pencil and push straight from the eraser to the tip. It goes straight. But as soon as you go at an angle, your arrow starts going off the side. And that's what you want to do with archery. You want to have that most perfect transfer from knock to tip. It's amazing what you find out when you start playing with stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And that's amazing, though, set one up too with 2 shots, because that's something you don't see or hear of, And I mean, obviously it's not something you want to do to hunt with and stuff, but like you said, it served its purpose. I can see it getting the kids' attention for sure, because, hey, he just shot 2 arrows at one time. That's something you don't see,
Yeah. Now they weren't near as fast because you got double the weight of your arrow.
Right. But it served its purpose.
Right. He wasn't trying to do anything fancy with it, just get their attention. And we're shooting at 20 yards, so that's a decent, distance. And
I remember starting out too, I didn't know. I'd go to Walmart or somewhere, and I didn't know what arrow length to shoot. Lord, I'd be shooting a 31-inch arrow. Used to, you had the overdraws and stuff. And of course, nowadays, you don't need a 31-inch arrow 9 times out of 10, but usually, you buy them off the shelf, or sometimes Walmart, something like that. They're usually 31 inches. And, that's another thing. I'd just grab an arrow and I'd go. But, nowadays, but that's the difference between knowing and not knowing,
Right.
That all falls back to, your tech and stuff, and people, whoever's helping you set it up. But things have changed. Boy, they have. I believe that bow had a overdraw. Was it 6-inch overdraw? I'm pretty sure it's what it was. Lord, I can barely even remember it, but it was wild. The rest too, it just had the little 2 prongs. It just held the arrow. Of course, if you moved, or torqued your bow, the arrow would fall off. I tell you what, I'm a believer. Of course, the whisker biscuits, they're nice, especially for beginners. I mean, you don't have to worry about your arrow falling off or nothing like that. They're great for beginners. I mean, and they're still, pros and all kind of hunters that shoot those. I mean, I'm not against them. I like them. I personally shoot a QAD drop away. But hey, for beginners, I believe that's one of the ways to go, as a whisker biscuit.
Well, less things to go wrong.
That's right. I mean,
and the original whisker biscuit was kind of not really good because there was no slot inside. It was just a solid ring. And then you had either slide your fletching in backwards or put your point through. And if you have broadhead, now you're dulling the broadhead, so you have to flip the fletching back. And if you're using vanes, that's all right. But every time you shoot, if you have a helical or an offset on your vanes, then every time you shoot, it starts to mess up your vanes, because the arrow is not turning at that point, but yet the fletching is. So the arrow's not turning, and now it's forcing those over, and it just kind of beats them up a little bit. So actually feathers is a little better because they're a little more forgiving. But when I would fletch feathers, I'd always put a drop of the glue on the front of the feather to help hold it down, because that had a little ridge and things would catch. And I would do the same thing if I knew that shooting through a biscuit, to kind of put it on the front and back to kind of help make sure they don't get knocked off as easy.
Right.
But now with the newer ones, have a slot in the side, and then you notice that there's a little darker color on the biscuits. And that is a little bit harder. So on those, you want to shoot with your cock feather up, because that's a little bit harder. So you want to send your fletching through the softer biscuit, the fins on it. And if that's easier to load, you can put a knock, you can slide it in, they stay on. I still hunt with the 2-prong rest.
Do you?
It's just a fixed one, and I've been shooting that for so long. Now, my other bow that I have a drop away on it, a PSC drop away, and it has a little cage that goes around it so it doesn't, fall
Right.
off the side. It's not going to fall off.
More
But,
containment.
as a hunting situation, you have one more thing to go wrong.
Yep.
You got to depend on that cable getting pulled up, and if you're using a string and all of a sudden it breaks or come loose, now you can't raise it up, and you can't. A lot of those you can't lock in the up position. Some you can lock in the up position, but it's not completely up. So it's just more things to go
Right.
wrong. So I don't
It
really
is.
hunt with that one, just because there's more things to go wrong.
Right. Well, you're exactly right though. And it's got more, anything more mechanical like that's definitely more vulnerable to something happening or going wrong in the field. And I agree with that 100%.
Well, and the decrease in accuracy of a biscuit isn't enough at your 20 yards or less shots. You're not going to notice it anyway. It's when you
Yeah,
start
and
getting out further distance that it can affect it. But
what's on the average of the speed loss? Like what, 3 feet per second, maybe?
yeah, probably it's some, not much, but
Yeah, it's very minimal. Not enough to, not enough to say, well, I'm not going to shoot one because of speed loss for sure, because it's not enough to really matter.
take your kisser button off and do the same thing.
Yep. And that's one thing. A lot of times, when I used to, I'd go into a shop and they're like, "You want a kisser installed?" And I'm like, "No." And that's one thing I've never really been able to get used to is a kisser button. And I know a lot of people shoot them. They're a good thing. I've shot them several times, but when I get my anchor point down, I've got it. But if you shoot enough, you'll find your anchor point and you'll know it.
Right.
But if you don't shoot a lot, the kissers are definitely where it's at. I mean, because you'll get your anchor point. You put the kisser button and set it, and you set it right in the crease of your mouth, and that's your anchor point.
Well, and if you're using like a wrist strap where it's always on your wrist, and you take that index knuckle, you put it behind that jaw, right in that pocket, that's where it's going to be all the time.
Yep.
I shoot that release as well as a hand on. I got a Carter chocolate addiction. Well, instead of being the knuckle in there, you can't put the knuckle in because you turn your hand over.
Right.
Now, a different part of my hand fits at that anchor point. So the anchor point changes on the contact between my hand and my face changes depending which release I'm shooting.
Exactly.
So if I have the kisser button, the nose, and the peep, I have 3 points of reference. I don't care where my hand actually anchors. Because it's going to feel different. I just know, here's where I anchor with this release. Here's our, my hand is there. It's a little bit different. And that just gives you 3 points of reference. Now I touch my nose. Some, instead of being a kisser button, will actually tie a little button on for their nose. And they'll feel, when it feels on the tip of their nose, then they know that's where it's supposed to be.
Right.
And now then they've got that specific thing in there. So, I have the kisser button in the nose, and that all depends on too is, how long axles you have. Because if you're real short axle, you may not be able to get it to the corner of your mouth, the kisser button. Your nose may not be able to touch.
Right.
It just might not reach.
That's exactly right. And I usually shoot a wrist strap type release, and that's what I've shot for years. I tried the thumb release, and they're nice. They're very accurate. I like them, but it goes back to having to, change my setup a little bit,
Right.
Versus me shooting a wrist strap. I can adjust it if I need a little shorter or longer. I can adjust the wrist strap that goes to my release, and I'll pull it back, and I'm back here by my ear. I know my anchor point. And when I grab that thumb release, it's a whole different world because I'm not used to shooting it. So you've got to find a new anchor point, and everything's different. So, I picked it up and I shot several times, and there'd be more times than not that I would hit a little off, I'm like, well, man, I don't want to swap this up in the middle of the season.
No,
That's something I want to do in the off season. You don't want to just swap right in the middle of the season because you've usually got to make some changes and get used to it. So that's why I usually go with what I know during season and try not to change a whole lot up.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I was recommending. It's like, when I, working at the archery stores, somebody come in and it's like, okay, we need to make change of this. Come back after you're done hunting and let's make a change. Let's not change it now because you're not gonna get used to it in time, and you're not gonna like it. You're not gonna shoot very well or anything else.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's something you need to play with, and it takes a little bit time to get different changes on those releases and everything. And practice, practice, and practice, and more practice.
Right. Get with a good coach that's going to watch what you're doing and make sure you're practicing correctly. Because if you're practicing bad habits, you only get better at your bad habits.
That's right. Someone that can tell you, hey, you're doing this wrong. You need to move your arm here, a little bit. It helps. A little coaching goes a long way.
Right. And that's why, I put together an online coaching program where I got some videos for you to watch, and then you can get in a group, and then I can actually look at your form while you're shooting, upload your scores and your video of your shooting, critique it, and then get on a live Zoom call and actually work out some of the bugs and kinks. And that works pretty nice because I can do it anywhere.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's great. I mean, it really is, because like I said, that falls back to your tech, and whoever's helping you, coaching you along, if they don't know, then you're not going to know.
Right.
So somebody with the knowledge goes a long way with it, especially in the bow hunting world.
Yeah, take a new archer. You have lots of things to look at. You take an experienced archer, and I've looked at some that are experienced that are shooting, national level, and it's like, okay, take a look. What is going on in my form? And I'm looking. It's like, okay, here's something you might try changing. You find one, you're getting down to tweak it. It's like, okay, you try just a little tweak. Maybe your hand position a little bit different, or maybe a little bit different position on your finger on your trigger, or where it's at on your thumb. And a lot of them will take the thumb releases and they put that knurled part clear on the second joint on the thumb, and then just use that thumb. No, you want it deep in your hand, so you just use your normal back tension. And I see a lot of so-called top archers, with releases just slamming on that trigger.
Right. Well, I tell you what, it's kind of funny. Of course, I dip some. I dip tobacco some, and a buddy and I was out in the yard. I guess it was a year or two ago, and I was shooting. I bought a new bow, and I was shooting it. Man, I'd been slamming them. Well, I put a dip in my mouth, and of course, I went to shoot, and I was like, man, what is wrong with me? Of course, I rest my string. I shoot the wrist strap, of course, and my anchor point's back here by my face. And of course, I've got something in my mouth, and that's pushing my mouth. My mouth is sitting a little different, And I realized at that point what was throwing me off is something that small, was throwing me off on my shots. And I was getting so aggravated because I couldn't figure out what in the world was going on. I told my buddy, I was like, well, I'm fixing to put my bow up. I said, this is horrible. I said, I've been out here stacking these arrows. And I said, I can't hit, he said, that's still good. I'm like, no, I want it right there at that dot. And I figured out what it was. And I was like, well, I know from now on, if I'm in the tree stand, what not to do.
Right.
And It's crazy. Something that small, though, can throw your shots off.
Yeah, it don't take much. That's why it's so important to have, those good form and good technique and good releases.
That's right. That's right.
We talked about that in the previous one, about the quality of the releases. And, we talked about earlier in this too. And, that's where you need some help, making sure you're getting that. So tell me about your pro staff that you're doing.
Well, I pro staff for Nose Down, of course. That's a scent company here in Tennessee. It's a great company, like I said, to work with, as I spoke of earlier. They've got all your synthetic scents, your estrus, your cover scents. Then they sell a few attractants like There are also cover scents like apple, corn, stuff like that, sprays. And then, of course, my favorite is actually scent elimination, which I'm going to be the first to say, I don't care what you're wearing or what you put on or what kind of scent, who, if you staff or what you're buying. Nothing is 100% effective to a white-tailed deer. The only thing 100% is the wind. And I'm a firm believer in that. Now, I will tell you this. Why do I use it then? People ask me. I was like, well, this is the reason why. Because if it gives me 5 seconds longer or 30 seconds longer or a minute to fool that deer or that animal that I'm hunting, to pull off the shot that I'm waiting on, that's enough reason right there for me to use it.
Right.
And like I said, nothing's 100% except for the wind. But if it helps you and it takes longer for them to realize you're there, hey, it's a winner for me. And also I staff, of course, for Element Archery and Flying Arrow Archery, which is Element arrows, and they're really great arrows. I currently shoot the nucleus arrows, trying to pronounce it right here, and they're very good arrows. They've got some that's the micro diameter 166. They're called the Storms. You can actually look up the video of them where they're shooting into a block wall in a basement. And, 9 times out of 10, they're just going to snap. And these Storms, man, they're so tough. Of course, they're micro diameter. They got a thick wall. Can't exactly remember the diameter, but they're tough, boy. They really are. And the broadheads for Flying Arrow, of course, I shoot you've got your old school that still only shoots fixed blades, and I have nothing against fixed blades. I like fixed blades. I shoot those as well, but currently I shoot the expandables. They've got one called the Kratos, and it's a 2-inch 2-blade broadhead. Of course, it does use an O-ring. That's the only downfall, which I haven't had no problems with it whatsoever. I've taken many a deer, and usually, a lot of the old ones, you have them bands on some of the older, mechanicals, and they, you get out in the field and the band would break, or, they get brittle and they just fall off. And now they've got these new O-rings, it's made kind of out of rubber. And I haven't had no problem with those these days. They seem to, to hold up pretty good in the field. But I've been very successful with all 3 of those products, and that's why I staff for those. I mean, I don't get nothing for free from none of the companies. I get a little discount here and there on some of it, but I definitely wouldn't staff for nothing if I didn't have faith in it and if it didn't work. I mean, I don't care what it is. If it don't work, I'm not using it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to have faith in your products and what you're using. And I definitely do with those products. But nose down, I believe it was J&S Scents. I know most of you've heard J&S Scents. I know the Tucker buck, was his name Jason Tucker? I think he was from here in Tennessee, which had the world record, I think, maybe for a year. It wasn't long. He killed here in Tennessee. It's been a few years ago. J&S Scents was, I believe, what he was using. And the owner of Nose Down was pretty much the J in J&S Scents, which is Jason Caldwell. And it's another reason. He's a great guy. And, I met him one day and I got to talking about scents and stuff. And he started showing me some of his products and stuff, and actually gave me some to try. And after that, I mean, I started using them. But the thing about it is, when you're working with somebody like that, and you can pick up the phone and call them or text them, and they run a business like that, and they answer, that goes a long way. If I call and say, hey, I need this, or I've got this person interested, or, if I just want to talk, I pick up the phone and he'll answer, and that goes a long way,
Right.
I mean, and I want to know where my scents and products are coming from. If I'm getting something bottled, I want to know it's not coming from China or somewhere overseas or something that, may have some additive or something in it. I want to know that it's pure.
Right. That's the best way is just have, the pure scent. the only thing better is to collect it yourself from the deer in your own area.
Right. You're right. And of course, I know a lot of the states nowadays have heard of CWD, which is a chronic wasting disease, and it's become new here in Tennessee. I'm going to say over the past 4 years or so, it's got well known. I mean, and now a lot of your scents, you can't put out minerals in these certain counties and zones or feed, which Tennessee doesn't allow hunting over feed anyways, but you can't even put it out in the off season now because of the spreading of the disease. But these scents have to be like ATA approved, certified, so you can use them in CWD zones. And of course, that's another thing, which another reason why I like nose down, because I can, legally use it here in my zone and state because it's ATA certified. And, you get caught with something that's not, then, here comes a ticket or something. So you got to make sure you're hunting with what's legal in your area.
Right. Yeah. I know here in Nebraska, you can't have any attractant, like the salt blocks or mineral blocks or feeders. It's like a couple of months or something, 30 days, 6 days before hunting season, they have to be gone. And, your feeders, you can't be hunting within so many yards of a feeder. And, so they don't let you hunt over bait.
That's the same here.
I've talked to some guys that have farms and when they harvest the corn, they go around the corn where they hunt and they'll spill some corn. Accidentally, like I said, quotes, accidentally spill some corn. As far as I know, you're going to be hunting this year because it wasn't put down as bait. It was part of the farm. You're going to spill corn when you're harvesting corn, and he just so happened to spill some by where he's going to be hunting. By the time he gets out there, they probably eat it all up anyway. But
yeah, more than likely. But that's and the thing about here in Tennessee, our limits and regulations are wild. And the CWD, I mean, I'm in the CWD zone, and I know a lot of states you're not allowed but one buck or a couple doe or so. Here where I'm at, in West Tennessee in this area, you can kill 3 doe a day all season long.
Oh, that's a lot of does.
3 doe a day. And it starts out with a 3 buck bag limit for the season. But for every doe that you harvest and submit for CWD sampling, you're subject to getting an extra buck tag for as many does as you want to have tested.
So you have to donate the whole deer to be tested then, or?
No, you just a lot of times you just cut the they've got these drop-off locations. They have coolers put out. Most of them's at your fire station, police officers, your processing buildings, and you just cut the head off, and you fill out your tag with all your numbers on it and stuff, and drop it in the cooler, and they'll test it. Now, if it's a buck with a big rack on it or something, we'll say most time you take those to to a processor, and they'll take it out if you're going to have it mounted or something. Like I'll just take it to my taxidermist, and he will cut it out and take it, and the game wards will actually come to his shop and get the sample, and I still get my deer head, get it mounted, and they test, and then I'll get a confirmation through an email saying whether it was detected, whether it had CWD or
not. Now, is the meat still safe to eat if it has it then?
They say that they've done numerous studies and there's no transfer from the deer to humans. They say that the meat is absolutely fine to eat. However, I haven't had any test positive right here where I'm at. Now, a county over from me, I've got a buddy over there that hunts a farm, and he's killed several this year, and every deer they've killed on that farm has tested positive, and their numbers are way down. But, they want you to try to kill as many as you can. Turn the light on, Sydney. They want you to try to kill. My daughter done turned the light out on me. They want you to try to kill as many deer as you can to stop the spread of it. And like I said, you can't put out minerals, but here's a question I asked them. I told them, I said, you've got a mineral lick, can't put minerals in it, but this mineral lick has been here for years. These deer are still going to come to these mineral licks for years to come. I mean,
Right.
and it's just like you've got, the acorns here a lot. They're spotty. Year to year, you may have one year where there's abundance of them. Then the next year you may have only certain trees in this area putting off a lot of acorns. And then it's nothing to look out the door and see 6 or 7 does standing under that one tree in a circle eating acorns. And I'm like, what's the difference? And that's one thing I know. I understand they're confined to a small space if you've got a pile of corn or minerals or something like that. But in reality, I mean, think about it. There's corn on the ground in the fields as well. But like I said, mainly the trees. Like I said, they're dropping in one spot. Right. And you've got all these deer gathered around. So it's kind of the same thing. And you can't stop that. I mean, that's nature. They're going to go where the food's at. And but it's wild. I mean, it was new for me with all the rules and regulations, but it's like a lot of people, they tell me well, I can kill this many deer. I can shoot this many, or legally this year we can shoot this many does or this many bucks, and they're like, well, how many are you going? I was like, well, it's not going to change the way I hunt. If I see a deer on my property that looks like he's sick or something, or she, whatever, then I'm going to do the right thing, obviously. But if the deer looks healthy to me, I'm not going to shoot it just because we're wanting to thin the herd. It goes back to me. I say manage your property the way you normally would.
Right.
If you take so many does a year and so many bucks a year, don't let that change for you unless, like I said, you're starting to see something going on with your herd. If you see deer walking around skin and bones, or just you can tell usually if a deer's sick, if they've got the disease or something, take them out of their misery. But I don't know how the killing every one of them is going to help it. But like I said, I'm no scientist or nothing like that. But I'm going to keep managing my herds on my farm the same way until I see something going on,
Yeah, sometimes if you see there's something wrong, you need to go ahead and take it. If you're managing a herd, for rack sites, you have something that has a really goofy rack on it. Well, you don't want that to be breeding on, so you want to take that out. But if it's okay, then let it go. I know one time I was hunting, a buddy of mine was down the hill hunting, and I was up there, and this little 8-point come by, and I let it pass. It was skinny, but the tines range from about 1 inch to about 2 inches tall. So I knew it was a young one, but it was already 8 points. And it just looked like just a skinny deer. It didn't look like it was sick or nothing. So I let it walk, and about that time, somebody comes walking up and it says, "Oh man, you chased off my 8-point." So I was giving crap about chasing it off. I wasn't going to shoot it anyway, but it's one of those things that, I was looking at it, it was like, hey, cool. It'll grow up and be bigger. And
yeah, see, my dad, he started a group on Facebook. It's called West TN Deer Hunters, which stands for West Tennessee Deer Hunters, and we've got over 17,000 members in that group. And a lot of times you get people on there, and they're asking or sending a picture, posting a picture. You'll have a doe in early bow season, and they'll say well, she looks sick, she's skinny, and a lot of are not experienced enough to know that a lot of times if you've got a doe that's nursing, and a lot of times may have twins they're nursing, they're going to look a little ran down. And it's the same way at the end of rut. I've got pictures of a 150-inch 10-point right now that I've kept track of all season, and I can go back and look at the pictures at the weight, and it's just crazy how much weight this deer's lost. But at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10 is probably from the rut. He's ran down from the rut and running does. So A lot of times people get that confused with the sick deer because they see one that's ran down or something, and it's easy to do. It's understandable if you don't know, but like I said, you take a buck that's been running for a month or so, chasing does all over the country, he's going to lose some weight pretty quick.
Right. Well, not spend as much time eating as they normally
That's
do.
right. That's right.
And
They're not focused on food as much.
right. They're focused on their annual duties.
That's right. And then when it's over, then they'll start focusing back on, the food. And that's where they're at here right now. In the afternoons, the fields are full. That's what they're looking for. We have crop fields, and right now is the time to be hunting those because the food source, it's nearing the end of winter here. So, they're looking for food to put the fat back on that they've done ran off.
Yeah, and now, if your hunting season is over, that'd be the time to put, your food out, your supplements out, and all that to help them through the next season. You don't really need to supplement during the summertime because there's plenty of food. They've got the grass to eat and everything else to eat. It's just that winter time when the grass isn't really growing. Well, up here in Nebraska, last time all it's covered with snow, so they got to dig through snow to even get the grass. So last time they won't even move if there's a lot of snow cover. But right now we don't have much snow cover at all. It'll snow and then melt and snow and then melt. So we don't have a lot of snow like we used to when I was a kid. We could have a foot or two of snow sitting on the ground. And now it's just not that way anymore. But that's where this is the time of year when you need to be adding stuff because the ground is froze. And the alfalfa fields or clover fields, they're going to be all frozen. They're not going to be as able to get them picked up. So now's the time to get out there and get your supplements out there.
That's right. And I've got a lot of friends, and I say, what kind of minerals do you use or when do I put them out? And then a lot of them, they'll wait until bow season opens, and then they'll go spend, a couple $100 on minerals and pour them out. And I'm like, dude, you realize all you're doing is pretty much trying to pull one in now because their antler growth is, pretty much over with. And they need the minerals usually, when they bounce back from the rut and the, the months that they don't have the food and the minerals and stuff they can't get. So, you're putting them out for the wrong reasons, really, then, because the deer's not getting the full benefit of it.
Well, no, that you can't, most states you can't hunt over the stuff you put out anyway. So putting it out says you're done hunting.
That's right. See, here, if you're not in the CWD zone, you can hunt over, salt and minerals. But it's like I said, you can try to pull those deer in with it, but at the end of the day, as far as helping it health wise, you're not really doing much, because they've got what they need, and they need it right after the rut and when they're ran down. They need to get their nourishment back up, and that's when they're looking for it.
Right.
Speaking of that, I mean, of course, I've got one county I can still put out minerals, and that's what I need to do pretty soon. Like I said, most of the counties right here around the house you can't because of the CWD rules and regs. But for the counties that I can, I need to get on that pretty quick myself. But I'm telling you, it's something else. It's a whole different world. The CWD makes it a whole different ball game.
Yeah, I think a lot of states have gone through that where they've had that, or blue tongue. We've had that up here for a while. That all comes from being overpopulated.
Yeah, it does. It does. And the thing here, our season starts. We have the velvet hunt the last weekend of August, the last Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of August. And then the last weekend in September, our archery season opens. And they shortened our archery season. Now it's only open, I believe this past season, it opened the last weekend in September and closed. I want to say rifle opened October 31st. We only had a month on bow only. And then it went straight to rifle. They cut out the muzzleloader, and then it's rifle from October 31st all the way, if you're on private land in CWD, all the way until January 31st.
Oh, geez, yeah. Well, their goal is to get population reduced.
Right. But see, even before the CWD, we had extremely long gun season considered, compared to other states, because even then it ran from Thanksgiving weekend until about the first to second week in January. So that's a long gun season.
Yeah, we have here in Nebraska, we have 9 days in November, starting like the second weekend in November, running for 9 days, and another one in January runs for 9 days. That's it for rifle. Then muzzleloader gets the whole month of December. And archery now is, it used to be kind of split, and now archery runs September 1st to December 31st. It never stops.
Yeah. Well, so you can go ahead.
It's just when we go out in archery during rifle season, we have to wear orange like the rifle hunters do.
Well, that's the same here. I mean, you can still hunt archery all the way to the end of January, but rifle season's open at the same time. And, a lot of folks around here, they bow hunt, but they don't do it during rifle season. When rifle season opens, if the bow's going in the closet.
Right. Little safer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know during our muzzleloader season, if you're out with a muzzleloader, you got to wear orange. But if you're out with archery, you don't have to wear the orange.
During muzzleloader?
Yeah, during muzzleloader is going the whole month of December. So if you're archery hunting during December, you don't have to have orange on, but if you have a muzzleloader, you do.
But see, it don't matter what, if it's a muzzleloader or a gun or whatever, if you're hunting with a bow outside of archery only, you have to wear orange here.
Yeah, just a little bit different. Each state's a little bit different rules on them. And
yeah, we used to have a split archery season that opened up. Rifle season would close for 2 weeks in the middle of season, and archery would run 2 weeks. It would close and just be archery only for those 2 weeks in the middle of gun, and that was pretty good. It usually has some pretty good hunts during those 2 weeks, and they done away with that, of course. But it gave the time for the deer to kind of cool back down and the pressure, and it was a good couple of weeks usually.
Yeah, it's all different. Each state has their own little rules on it. And the amazing part is we have all this overpopulation of deer, and at the turn of the century, they never thought deer would be a viable big game hunting species because there's so few of them.
Right. And we've got a lot of hunters these days too. And if you think about it, you think, Lord, we've got all these hunters. How do we even have any deer left? But at the end of every season, they still bounce back. I mean, they're still there.
Well, if you take half the does out next year, you're back at the same number.
Yeah.
Or higher. Depends if they have one or two.
Yeah, and it's very common around here, for a lot of them to have 2 fawns.
Yeah, so if you take out half the does, now you've replaced them, and then you're still growing.
Right.
Each year. So yeah, you can see why they kind of growing over time. And I know when I was a kid, when I first started hunting in Nebraska, you could only have 2 tags period to take a deer. It could be 2 archery tags, it could be 2 rifle tags, it could be a rifle and muzzleloader. So if you did archery and muzzleloader, you couldn't do rifle because you only allowed 2 deer a year.
Yeah.
Period. And then it come to, there's what they call their season choice tags now, and they're issuing only so many of those. That once those run out, when they first started doing those, there wasn't any limit on them. And I know guys that would go out and shoot 20 and 30 deer, during archery season. And we don't have quite, the population you do down there, but up here we have a lot of fields too. So a lot of corn fields and bean fields and alfalfa fields and stuff like that. So there's a lot of open fields out here, and so they're not going to hold as many deer as the areas that have lots and lots of forest areas.
Right. See, it's rolling hills, I would say here. So we have, a lot of timber. We have, some crop fields right here, but the majority is timber, and that gives them somewhere to hide, and that's why our population is probably booming.
Yeah, I know the couple of properties that I hunt's mostly field, and one is there's 2 fields, and there's just a row of trees around one side and the back, and a little bit of area between the other side.
Yeah.
And the trail cameras, I did a whole podcast on trail cameras, and what if I put trail cameras up, say, okay, when are they coming through? Well, most of the time they're coming through the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Like 10, 11, 1, 2, 3 o'clock at night, they're coming through. Now, on one camera is able to pick them up that's coming through right before legal shooting time. Like a half hour before or so, sometimes an hour before shooting time, and I couldn't track where they was going because the camera wouldn't get onto the field. So they're coming through then. So, when I was out there, it's like the only place to set up is right there, because no times I see them, and the whole time I got to check my cameras here lately, but yeah, over the last month, one time I've seen a deer come through during the day.
Yeah, I've got one particular deer, and that I've hunted for 2 seasons, and I really want to take him with my compound, but I haven't had no luck yet. He's on a 30-acre block of woods in the bottom, and there's fields all the way around it. So just about every picture I get of this deer, he won't cross the field during the daylight hours because there's other hunters that hunt the fields. So 9 times out of 10, it's right before dark, or right before daylight, or right after dark when he comes through. So he's, those are the hard ones to hunt,
Right. You got to figure out where to hijack them ahead of in the forest
Right.
someplace. Where are they coming through in the forest? Where they staging that shooting time.
Yeah, it's like a buddy of mine. He's like, man, if I had a deer like that on camera, I'd be down there hunting. I was like, well, I hunt him when the conditions are right. I said, but I've only got a 30-acre block, and he's obviously not staying in there. He's passing through. So the thing is, if I had permission to hunt, other places to find out where he's staying, it'd be a different ball game. But I'm pretty much it's just a waiting game. You just got to wait until usually the rut is when he comes through. But this year I didn't even get a daylight picture of him. They've all been at dark. I had one about 30 minutes before daylight one morning, and that was as close as I got.
Yeah, that definitely makes it easier when we have cameras we can kind of monitor what they're doing. And when I first started, they didn't have trail cameras.
Right.
Trail cameras, your eyes. And I remember when I first started deer hunting, I'm going out looking, and if I'm out looking, if I seen a track in the dirt, it was a good day. Because that meant there's deer in the area. It wasn't like the population now, because that was, probably 35 years ago. It wasn't near like what it was now. And, then it got down to where, okay, if I seen a deer, that was a good day. It could be in a field running on the way driving in, but at least I seen a deer that day. Then it got down to where, you're seeing them, and now, every time you go out, you're either seeing them, within range or out of range, and then you learn how to hunt them, and it takes a while.
It does. And the world of trail cameras has come a long way. I remember when I moved to Tennessee about 15, 16 years ago, I bought my first one. It was one of the big old Moultries that had the great big battery in it.
Yeah.
And just the excitement of not knowing what was going to be on it when I went to check it. I go out and check it, every few days or once a week, and just never knowing what you was going to get on there. Now we've got, cellular cams. And
Yeah.
of course, I've got several of those that I run. And I'm not going to say that they've, helped me kill any deer, but to let me know that they're in the area, to know what I've got to hunt, it helps. But I will say this, and a lot of people depend on them too much. And I have been one of those guys before, but just because you're not getting them on camera doesn't mean that they're not there.
Right.
You know, they're confined to walk by a small space right in front of that camera. They've got the whole field or the woods to walk by, you know. So to say that you don't have nothing on camera worth shooting, you know, may not be true. They may just not be in front of your camera, but they're coming through. So you can't let the camera pictures discourage you when you're not getting them.
Right. It definitely lets you know, here's the places I can set up my tree stands.
Right.
Am I getting anything coming by here that I can get to from the tree stand? And
Right.
and that's why when it's nice to kind of go out there, when it's not archery season during rifle season, when you can't be out there with your bow and sit out the rifle, because now then you can see the fields during the day. Okay, are they coming through a different spot and not even going by where a camera we put up? Because you can't monitor everything at night because it only goes so far. They could be walking right up next to the house coming in. They could walk in on top of the hill going back, and we know they're walking down there because we can see tracks. So they're walking in different places, but when are they going through? And that's where sitting in there with the the binoculars and just monitoring everything is
Right.
kind of nice. Use your rifle season to scout so you know what to do when rifle's over and start up with archery.
That's right. I had an 11 point on camera last year. I had him on camera a lot during velvet. And I had an old timer tell me once, he said, some of those big bucks, he said, they'll tolerate the trail cameras. If if you got them right down, low, say you got them on corn or minerals or something, and they know they're there, like they'll tolerate them in your off season months. And even up until a lot of times till they start getting aggressive and drop their velvet, and they don't care to be in front of them, it seems. And during the season, a lot of time they get more aggressive and start paying more attention because there's more pressure. And I was like, no, man, I ain't gonna pay no mind to that camera. And that deer, I hunted him. I had cameras up, and he just dropped off the map. I was like, dude, I know that deer's still alive. If somebody would have killed him, I would have known in this small of an area. So I started getting my cameras out and moving them, and I moved them around some, kind of put them up higher in the trees on the trails that I thought he might be coming down. And sure enough, he was just avoiding. That's one spot where I had the camera. He was walking right around it. Now, it may sound crazy, but you're talking about a mature deer. And
right.
This year, I actually pulled the four-wheeler up to the tree and put them up a little bit up in the tree and angled them down. And I didn't have that problem this year, but I had 11 point last year. And I had a lot of pictures in velvet. I had a couple when he lost his velvet, but he went off the maps for like a month and a half. And I was sitting in my tree stand one morning, and lo and behold, this deer come out, and he walked right behind the tree that the camera was on. I kid you not, he wasn't 4 foot from this tree and walked out right on the other side of it, walked around it. And I ended up killing him. I was like, man, I thought somebody done killed that deer, but he come right through there and walked right by it, but he just didn't go in front of it. So that's what I'm saying, don't let it discourage you because you're not getting pictures, because, they can still be coming through. And I've had a lot of friends say, hey, let me help with you. I'm not getting no pictures of no good deer on camera. And I'm like, dude, they're there. Don't let the camera tell you otherwise. I mean, they're nice and they get what comes in front of them, and that's it.
Yeah, I've had some pictures of deer actually sticking their nose on the camera, smell it, because you touch it, you leave your scent on it, and they can smell that, and they come up and it's actually sitting there smelling it. And nice that when you're in kind of a populated area, they're used to human scent, so it's not spooky to them because the farmers running through there and everything. They're used to human scent. And like one of the public places I used to hunt, there's people out there walking the forest all the time, and the deer, it just doesn't really bother them too much. People walking around, it's just that weird scent or something. But they just they kind of get used to human scent. Now, if you're in an area where there's not much humans and it's a strange scent, now that I can see, that might be something to be concerned about.
Right. and it's like one of the farms here I hunt at the house. The guy is it's a cow pasture is mainly where I hunt on this one particular farm. And the guy that actually owns the property, of course, he's got a side by side, and he rides through there all times during the week, during the day, checking on his cows, putting out hay and this and that. So these deer, you know, they don't pay no mind to it. You'd basically be safer riding your four-wheeler in than you would walking, because they're used to him riding that. So it's all in what they get used to, what they're used to in their surroundings. And you know, I mean, I've seen people say, hey, I drive my four-wheeler right up to my blind. I was like, well, I don't do that, but I can see, if they're used to four-wheelers and stuff, a lot of times it don't bother.
Yeah, and so don't drive your truck up by there. I was hunting this farm one time, and there's a little pond there, and I parked by the pond because where we had permission to hunt was the other side of the tracks, his property over there. So I can see my truck from my tree stand.
Right.
And I watched the deer walk within 5 feet of the back of my truck and just walk past it like nothing.
Yep. I've had them do that down to me on one farm. I parked my truck there, and I'm expecting the deer to come from somewhere else. I'm like, they ain't going to come from over there. I'm parked right there, and lo and behold, here they are walking out 50 yards behind my truck. And I'm thinking, well, now we know they ain't not paying it no mind. But like I said, it's on what they get used to. You go to, you go to a property like a WMA or something that doesn't get a lot of pressure or something, and they're not used to humans or four wheelers, nothing like that, then they're going to be a little bit more skittish.
Right. Just all what they're used to.
Yeah, I've got another farm that's bordering a cow pasture, and these guys, they're retired and they're out there every day, whether it be, cutting trees and burning them, or cleaning up the fence lines or something, riding their four wheelers or their tractors and this and that. I mean, there could be a field full of deer, and I can pull up my truck, and they don't go nowhere because they're used to them being out there, so they think I'm just out there tending to the cows or what have you.
Yeah.
So it's wild, but anyways.
Well, what advice would you give a new archer that's looking to get into archery?
Well, like I said before, the main thing is don't listen to all the hype about the bow brands, because the brand is not what matters the most. Don't let somebody pressure you into going to buy a $1,200 bow right off the bat. Go to a shop, shoot several bows. I mean, don't just shoot one and say, I like it. Shoot several bows and find the best one you're comfortable with and you're the most accurate with that fits you. Because all in all, at the end of the day, the accuracy is what counts. It's not the price tag or the looks. You got to have confidence in yourself and equipment. So that's my main thing is, find a bow that suits you and that fits you. Your right draw length, your weight. Don't try to over push it. If you can only pull back 55 pounds comfortably, then hey, that's what you need to be shooting. Don't say, well, he's shooting 70 pounds. Well, I should be, shoot what's comfortable for you, and practice a lot, and it's going to get you down. You're going to have days where you walk out there and you shoot, 5 or 6 arrows, and you're going to hit the 10 ring or whatever, you're going to hit perfect. And, you're going to think, man, I'm doing good. And then you're going to have bad days. You're going to have days you go out there and practice, and, just bear through it. It's part of it, but the main thing is just keep practicing and keep learning. You can never learn enough. I mean, there's always something to learn in the archery world. There's always somebody out there that can teach you something that, you probably don't know, that can make it easier and more accurate for you. So, listen to those guys that know what they're doing. Go to your pro shops. If you got a question, ask them, because you can never learn enough.
Well, it's been great talking to you today, and I know we'll talk later. And it's really been a pleasure having you on the podcast. And I know I enjoy talking to you, and I'm
Hey, I
sure that our
appreciate
listeners
it.
will enjoy it as well. And
I appreciate it. I'm glad you had me on here.
yeah, there's a lot of fun.
Yes,
So,
sir. Thank you.
my name is Roy Canterbury, and I've been your host today on Archery Talk 101.